Good morning. If you have your Bibles, take them out. Turn to the book of Hebrews chapter 11. If you have our church app, I encourage you to download that. If you don't, just simply go to your app store, WalkEMC. Actually, Wakarusa Missionary Church is what you would search your app store for. You'd find our app. In the app, you'll find a link to some today's notes. There's some additional things that are added that I added yesterday as I was going through things last night. And so you'll find a little bit of extra stuff in there that won't be on the screen today. Before we get too far, I want to talk about the Good Friday experience that is coming up. We've been announcing it now for a couple of weeks. This is something that I'm excited about. It's something that I've wanted to do for a while. This is a combination of a number of video experiences. And so it's going to be a video-driven experience that really speaks to the build up to the crucifixion and the price that Jesus paid on the cross for us. And so I've been asked at different times, is this a family-friendly experience? And the question is, how do you make the crucifixion experience family-friendly? And here's the problem. I think we've done too good of a job at making the crucifixion experience too soft. And so the answer is, it's kind of soft. All right, it's not the most graphic of everything, but the whole concept is to stop. Because followers of Jesus, we have this tendency to push through Palm Sunday and get to Easter as fast as we can. That's a problem as I see it. We need to pause long enough to experience the cross and the build up to the cross and the reality that this was done for me. And this is an experience that you get to come and take place. So did I answer the question well enough? I don't know. I did. We don't have childcare that night. I would encourage you, if your child is up to it and able to sit for a 45-minute experience, then that's something that's up to you as parents. But it is very much geared around the cross and the price that was paid. So I'd invite you to come. We have two different showings of it, the noon and 6 o'clock. Come to noon, and if it was worth seeing, invite somebody to come back at 6 and join you with that as well. All right, so that's enough of that. What I want to do is get on today to this Re-Engage series that we've been in. This is week number 5 for this series, and we've been talking about a number of things along the way. Last week we talked about some sacrifices that were made, and we looked back even at our history a little bit. Today I want to talk about this topic of surrender. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 30 says this: "It was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days, and the walls came crashing down." Now let's take a look at this for a second. Last week I jumped into Hebrews 11 and I said this is the Hall of Faith chapter, where we're talking about by faith Noah, by faith Abraham, by faith Jacob, by faith all of these people did all kinds of things. And this is in that chapter. It was by faith that the people of Israel, they marched around Jericho for 7 days, and the walls came crashing down. And it's really easy, much like Good Friday, it's really easy to look at this and go, wasn't that a great story? That was a great story. But I think it's really important for us to look back at all that led up to this moment and all the surrender that was required of the children of Israel in this season of time to understand what really transpired in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 30, and why it was by faith. And so let's take a little history lesson. Let's take a look backwards. Again, in your notes and up here on the screen, I'm just going to list some different things that happened along the way, but let's take a brief history lesson. It was Israel that was in slavery for 400 years, roughly, I think it was 430 years or so, enslaved for 430 years, and God brings them out of Egyptian slavery. I want you to think about this. It's easy for us to go, wow, that was a long time. But let's set the perspective here accurately. This is generations and generations and generations that only knew slavery. This idea of freedom happened some point in time, but it was generations that grew up, and that's all they knew. Little kids born into slavery, little kids growing up to be adults, grandparents, great-grandparents, dying enslaved in Egypt, 400 plus years. This is all they knew. Let's talk about the population. Israel's population at this time, because again, I don't think we fully grasp all that is there. Israel's male population at this time is 600,000 people. It's perspective. Sometimes we see pictures of the children of Israel wandering around in the desert. It looks like there's about 40 of them, right? This is 600,000 men, male. That's the male number that was counted at that particular point in time. Let me paint even a clearer picture of what 600,000 people is like. It's a little bigger than Wakarusa, Indiana, okay? Just slightly. Actually, you want to get a picture of what 600,000 people is? That is the city of Louisville, and their sluggers. That's 600,000 people. Another great way, an even better way, if you ask me, how to describe what 600,000 people is, that's the city of Detroit, home of the Detroit Lions. 600,000 people. All right, now you get this picture. That's 600,000 men, not counting women and children. If you were to count women and children in that number, and you just added like the normal statistics that X amount of children per day, per capita, or whatever, per day. do we ever count children per day? Maybe in school you used to do that, but per household, we can assume that this was well over 1 million people, right? And so roughly, some estimate somewhere around the size of the city of Chicago. All right, so the city of Chicago wandering around. God led the people towards the Red Sea. You can see that in Exodus. They flee Egypt, they're heading out, and they come towards the Red Sea. And that had an experience in and of itself, right? I mean, what are we going to do? We come up against this situation. I don't know what to do. We're wandering out this way. We've left what we've known, we've known for all our generations, and now we're wandering through this area. We're free, but where are we going? What are we doing? So they head out towards the Red Sea. But God has this really cool navigation system that he was using. God is leading the people of Israel by a pillar of cloud during the day and by a pillar of fire every night. That's really cool, isn't it? Because if you think about it, take this, again, when you keep perspective about all this, you're talking about the city of Chicago, wandering outside of Egypt into the wilderness and trying to navigate. Nobody had cell phones. Nobody had Google Maps. Nobody had walkie-talkies that they could just say, hey, do we got you in the back still? Those stragglers back there, do you have them? No, this is trying to get information to all kinds of people. This is a massive, massive undertaking. So God says, watch this. Follow that cloud. Watch this. What do we do at night? I got one better. Watch this pillar of fire. You know, Brant sent me a picture, and some of us a picture the other day of his charcoal grill, and a picture of this massive flame coming out of it, which was completely overrated, if you ask me. But imagine this pillar of fire that the whole city of Chicago could see and go, I think we should be going that way. This was God's plan, and this was God's investment into this experience that they were having. But they come up against an obstacle, and Israel's obstacle is this Red Sea. Allowing all of these people to cross over this Red Sea was an incredible feat. They get up to this point, and the whole city of Chicago is backed up against the sea. And they're being pursued by the Egyptian army. They're pinched in. What in the world are we going to do? I have no idea what's next. We can either drown in the Red Sea, we can be taken out by the Egyptian army, and people start to go, why are we here even? Like, it was better to be enslaved. But God says, watch this. I'll make a way where there seems to be no way. and he parts the Red Sea. And the city of Chicago walks across the Red Sea on dry ground. It's incredible. And people go, oh, come on now, really? Did that really happen? Yeah. Why? Because there are a bunch of people that drowned when the water came back and swallowed up the Egyptian army. It's an incredible story. Israel arrives at their destination. The people of Israel ultimately wind up at the edge of the land that God has promised them. In Deuteronomy chapter 1, verses 20 and 22, it says, 20 and 21, it says this, I, and this is Moses speaking, said to you, you have now reached the hill country of the Amorites that the Lord our God is giving us. Look, he has placed the land in front of you. Go and occupy it as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has promised you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. And Moses is telling these people, look at all that wandering around that we've done to get to this point so far. God has been leading us every step of the way, and now we're at the edge, and God says, go for it. This is yours. You can do this. Go for it. Do not be discouraged. Do not be afraid. You're at the edge of your next season of life. This is going to be amazing. But Israel had uncertainty about them. The people of Israel said, as our friend on Saturday mornings for college football, Lee Corso, says, not so fast, my friend. They stood at that edge and they said, I don't think so. Hang on a second. Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 22 tells us more to this story. It says, But y'all came to me and said, first let us send out scouts to explore the land for us, and they will advise us on the best route to take and which towns we should enter. And according to Numbers chapter 13, verses 1 and 2, God ultimately approved of this idea, allowing Moses to send 12 spies out into the land. And in Numbers chapter 13, you see some of the feedback that they're going to gather, some of the intel that they're hoping to get. They want to know, are the people that live in this land there, are they strong? Are they weak? Are they few? Are there many? How many people are in this land? We need to know the intel before we go in, is what they're saying. Is this land good or is this bad? Are there cities like tent camp cities, or are there fortified cities? Is there a land rich or is it poor? Are there a lot of trees there? Bring back some of the fruit, they were told, of the land that you see there. And so they go out. And they send 12 spies into this land to start to get feedback and gather the intel. And in Israel's intelligence report comes back like this. The spies return and they report what they found. Numbers 13. 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, said, we got this. We've looked. We saw it all. We've got this. Let's go. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's do this now. We got this. 10 other ones said, ain't no way we can do this. Those dudes are huge that we saw. There's no way. We can't do this. But God had promised them victory in the land that he commanded them to go and take. And all they had to do, hear me on this, all they had to do was trust and obey. They had to trust and obey. But they were too afraid. They're too afraid. What you think about this? They're afraid to go into this land because they thought, well, what happens when we run into difficult situations? It's like they forgot that God had been leading them by a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. It's like they forgot that he parted the Red Sea and let them cross on dry ground. It's like they forgot that he provided them manna for the city of Chicago every day to feed them. And they get to the edge and they get afraid. They're like, well, what if this doesn't work? What do we do if we're in a pinch? I don't know. I think God has a plan that can maybe help us out. And that's where Joshua and Caleb are like, we got this. And the others are like, I don't know. Why? Because their eyes were on themselves. Their eyes were on their circumstances. Their eyes were not on God, who had the plan. And so they rebel. Israel rebels. Numbers chapter 14, verses 1 through 4. The whole community began weeping aloud and cried all night. I say things that pop into my head sometimes that aren't always good and aren't always bad. And, I was just thinking to myself, Denny Yoder would call them a bunch of Sallys, right? Bunch of sissies. What are you doing sitting around here crying all night? You can't figure all this out. You're weeping out loud. What a bunch of sissies. Their voices rose in a great chorus of protest against Moses and Aaron. If we had just died in Egypt, or even here in the wilderness, they complained, why is the Lord taking us to this country only to have us die in battle? Our wives and our little ones will be carried off as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt? They plotted among themselves. This is what happens when you don't feel comfortable with a leadership decision that gets made in our culture even today. Let us choose a new leader and go back to Egypt and be enslaved. Instead of saying God has a plan and he's got this thing sorted out. So let's pause for a moment. That's some of the history. Let's take a break. Do you believe that God will never lead you where his grace cannot provide for us or his power cannot protect us? Is that how you're living your life? Are you living your life in such a way as you believe that there's no place that God will send you that he can't provide for you or protect you? Because I'm not so sure we don't live in that same fear today. Paralyzed. Well, I don't know. What if he doesn't show up? How many times in our lifetime can you look back in your life and see how God's provided? And yet we still sit on the edge of our next steps and go, I don't know. I don't know. Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. The failure to surrender to God's plan kept them from entering the promised land, and they wandered for 40 more years. And according to Numbers 14, God gave them what they complained about. He gave them what they were pitching a fit about. Everyone 20 years old and older would die in the wilderness and never see the promised land except for Joshua and Caleb, the two spies who said, we've got this. We can do this. So let me give you a summary of the next steps. Joshua ultimately becomes the next leader of the Israelites after Moses, and his first major challenge as Israel's leader is found in Joshua chapter 5. And it's not an easy one. Jericho, as they started to look around Jericho, they find that it's surrounded by a wall that's estimated to be somewhere between 25 and 40 feet high. All right? In today's military, we got this. In that day's military, that's a challenge. 25-foot high walls, fortified, maybe up to 40 feet high, and we don't have all the ladders and all the equipment, and they're fortified. They can shoot down on us. What in the world are we going to do? Humanly speaking, it's impossible for the Israelites to enter Jericho. But on that eve of that battle, Joshua, as a leader, goes for a walk. You put yourself in a leadership position, and it's the night before a battle, and Joshua's probably not able to sleep real well, right? And he's thinking to himself, oh, buddy, what are we doing? Lord, what are we doing? He was probably tired of scrolling through Facebook as he was laying in bed that night. And he got up and he said, you know what, let's go for a walk. I'll go for a walk. And as he's out on his walk, Joshua chapter 5, verses 13 through 15. This is what it says. When Joshua was near the town of Jericho, he looked up and he saw a man in front of him with a sword in hand. And Joshua went up to him and demanded, are you friend or foe? Neither one, he replied. Can you imagine the confused face? You're not my friend, but you're not my enemy? Like, what's happening here? Neither one, he replied. I'm the commander of the Lord's army. Notice this next as it continues on. At this, Joshua fell with his face to the ground in reverence. I'm at your command, Joshua said. What do you want your servant to do? And the commander of the Lord's army replied, take off your sandals. The place where you are standing is holy. Look at this next verse. And Joshua, the commander of this army, this big group of people, did as he was told. Another way of saying it, Joshua surrendered his will to the will of God. We have to get to the point in our lives where we understand, hear me on this. We have to get to the point in our lives where we understand that life isn't about success and life isn't about failure. Life is about surrender. It's not success. It's not about our failure. It's about our surrender. And the very thought of surrender, can we just take this out and walk it around for just a little bit? The very thought of sitting in the Midwest of the United States of America and talking about surrender feels very un-American, does it not? We're told never to surrender, to never quit, to keep fighting, even if the odds are stacked up against us. And I wholeheartedly agree with that mentality when we're talking about sports, when we're talking about competitions that we're involved in, even military battles. But in our spiritual life, hear this, in our spiritual life, surrender is actually the path to freedom. It's the path to freedom. And it's oxymoronic in our life because we say, well, if we surrender in a basketball game, or if we surrender this, we're not ever going to accomplish the goal. But in your spiritual life, surrender is the path to victory. And this is where we get it mixed up sometimes. A simple definition for surrender is this. Surrender involves ceasing resistance, giving up, or abandoning oneself to someone or something else. Look at this. I'm going to have this stay up on the screen because I want you to keep coming back to this definition. Surrender, simply defined as it involves ceasing resistance or giving up or abandoning oneself to someone or to something else. So what are the critical areas in our life? And this is where I added this to the notes last night. It's in the app. You can find it there. What are some of those critical areas then that as followers of Jesus we have to surrender? Let me list some of them for you. What about control and independence? And again, it's a little oxymoronic to the American way. Surrender control. I mean, I've given Jesus most of my life. I've given Jesus a lot of my life. Why would I surrender all of my life to him? I want you to picture what it is when a coach in a locker room says to his players, hey, listen here, focus on the plays you like in my playbook. Show up for practice when you feel like it, but make sure you come to the game. How's that going to go? Or a musician, a music teacher says to their students, hey, I'm just offering you suggestions to how to play those things or how to hit the notes right or the timing of it all. Or I'm just offering you suggestions. You'll be great. Just do whatever feels good to you. Or what about a marriage counselor who doesn't tell couples, who simply says to couples, here's the deal. Just give 50% effort to your relationship and you should be good. But in case it isn't good, just keep your options open. How foolish would that be? There's no success when there's only partial surrender. When we yield control to an ultimate plan, now we have a plan forward. And there isn't a plan B. But too many of us are living our lives with plan B. Well, what if this thing with God doesn't work out? Well, I'll just fall back on my own control and I'll fall back on my own independence. That's what I'll do. Let me tell you, it doesn't work. And some of you keep trying. Let me personalize that. I also am with you. I keep trying at times to do it on my own. And like I think it's going to be different this time. But it's not. What if we surrendered our identity and our self-worth? When we surrender the need to define ourselves by our accomplishments or our possessions or our approval, we find our true worth in being deeply loved and ultimately defined by Christ. What if we surrendered our time and our priorities? Surrendering our schedule means choosing to put God first, making space for relationships and worship and serving others, even when it's not convenient? What if we surrendered our finances and our resources? Surrendering these means realizing that everything we have comes from God. So we loosen our grip, we trust His guidance, and we live generously rather than clinging to financial fear and financial selfishness. What if we surrendered our relationships? And what if we surrendered forgiveness? Surrendering our right to hold grudges means choosing reconciliation and showing Christ's love, even when relationships, and you don't have to tell me, I know, they get messy. But what if we surrender the right to get even and surrender the right to hold a grudge? What if we surrendered our habits and our temptations, handing over our bad habits and our struggles and our temptations to God and trusting His strength to help us break free from those things that bind us? What if we surrendered our future and our security, handing over our worries, our fears, our uncertainties about the future to God and allowing His peace, which, by the way, as Scripture says, passes all our understanding, guards our hearts and our minds in Christ Jesus, and can replace the anxiety that we feel when we surrender our future and our security to Him. This Engage initiative that we've been involved in is so much more than a financial project. It's about a way of life. It's about a church that's surrendered to Jesus being more powerful than anything else. When we surrender our lives to Christ and allowing Him to be the one in control, He can do immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine. Because when our hearts are in God's hands, we'll do exactly what God wants us to do. You know, Jesus modeled this idea of surrender so perfectly. And as we talked at the beginning about Good Friday experience, when you look at the Passion Week, Jesus' prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, when He faced the cross, He prayed, God, at the end of the day, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. But at the end of the day, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. What if we took that attitude in our life and simply said, Lord, I'm not excited about this. I'll be honest with you. I'm not excited about this next season. But Lord, at the end of the day, not my will, but yours be done. That's the ultimate surrender. And that type of surrender changes everything. I'm going to ask the band if they would come on out at this time. I want you to think about this idea of surrender. What are some of the areas in your life that need surrender? Maybe you resonated with this idea of control. Maybe you resonated with this idea of surrendering your independence or your identity. You're consumed in what your friends say your identity should all be about. You're consumed with what the social media world tells you your identity should be. What if you surrendered your identity and your self-worth? What if you surrendered your time and your priorities to God? What if you surrendered your finances and your resources or your relationships and maybe finally forgiving that person that you've been holding a grudge against forever and simply saying, God, I'm placing this one in your hands. And let me say something along those lines real fast. Some of you have been really hurt and some of you have been really wounded. Surrendering a grudge and offering forgiveness doesn't mean you have to live in close relationship. There's a difference there. For some, that would be the worst thing you can do. Don't become re-victimized by a situation, but there is a side where at some point we have to get to the point where we say to the Lord, I'm willing to forgive them and allow you to do what you need in their life. But I'm not going to allow the bondage of that to happen anymore in my life. Maybe it's habits and temptations. Maybe it's your future and your security. What do you need to surrender? I'm going to put a prayer I wrote up on the screen, and I want to end a little bit differently today. I want you to read this out loud with me, would you? Ready? God, I give you my plans. I give you my future. I give you my fears. I give you my hopes. I lay them all at your feet. Lead me,